Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to a new episode of The Booth, where I'm going to be doing something that you've been asking me to do for a very long time. I'm going to be doing something which I've been getting message after message after message for. Which shows what? What does it show?
It shows that there's a resurgence in the desire and the raghbah to seek ilm shara'i, to seek Islamic knowledge. There's an absolute awakening, actually.
It's awakening.
There's an awakening, alhamdulillah. There's an awakening amongst the youth, the Western youth especially. For those really who want to seek knowledge and come close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by removing the ignorance and removing the ignorance of those around them.
Yes. So just to get to the chase, cut to the chase straight away, what we're doing today is we're going to go through an Islamic reading list. And this is going to be a video of many different videos, inshallah. We're going to be doing different reading lists for different subject-specific specialisms. So here we've got someone who's, we're going to introduce him in a second, who's going to go take us through the Islamic reading list, but we're also going to go through a history reading list. We're also going to go through a philosophy reading list. We're also going to go through some things that relate to contemporary just reading that we need to go through. So inshallah we'll try and compartmentalize, get someone who's got real insight and understanding of that particular subject-specific field to give us their take, and that's the best way I think is that we could do it. Today we're with Sheikh Mohammed Osman. How are you?
Hayyakumullah. I'm very well, brother Mohammed. Hijab, how are you?
Alhamdulillah, not bad. Sheikh Mohammed Osman is someone who has graduated from the Faculty of Hadith in Medina University in Saudi Arabia. He spent good time in Saudi Arabia. How long did you spend there? About 5 years?
Roughly about that, plus Egypt.
You spent 5 years in Egypt, something like that?
No, less than about a year in Egypt. I was around 2007.
Well, how do you don't like Egypt?
No, I benefited greatly, alhamdulillah. But unfortunately, I picked up more of the Egyptian dialect more than the Fusha.
That's very fortunate. It will help you in the country, inshallah. But what we're going to be doing today, because I thought, how are we going to structure this this particular episode? And I thought the best way to do it, and obviously you can correct me, I'm here just to put things together. In terms of putting a spine for this particular episode, is we've got obviously seminaries, and we have universities all across the Muslim world. We're going to try and make it as brief as possible. This is a big topic. It's very difficult to condense. And truth be told, we've actually done this episode before, and it was a 2-hour episode, so we're trying to make it into it was too long. To cut straight to the chase, so that we don't make it a 2-hour episode once again, we're basically going to go through Al-Azhar. It's quickly go through its curriculum. We're going to go through the Medina's curriculum. Darul Uloom's, the Hanafi guys, what they're going to go through. We're going to go through the Mauritanians, which I've got the most notes for actually, and what they go through as well.
Which is without a shadow of a doubt the most comprehensive reading list, or comprehensive curriculum, we should say. I mean, there's no surprise about that, because
what do you think?
I believe you got this curriculum from Sheikh Mohammed Hassan Dido. His centre called Tafsir and Uloom, which is the Centre for the Development of Scholars, and I believe their program is actually
17 years.
17 years. MashaAllah.
And you have to be a Hafiz of the Quran with 2 qira'ahs in order to
I think that's to get it into the last level, which is roughly 9 years. So alhamdulillah, it's a very, very strong program.
Before we talk about all of that, I think it's due upon us to talk about the Quran itself. Hifz of the Quran, understanding of the Quran, and the Arabic language, just to access the Quran. Give me 3-4 minutes on that.
طيب, firstly, subhanallah, the Arabic language.
Yes.
Which I believe anyone who is studying the Quran, or anyone who wants to read the Islamic sciences, it is an obligation, individual obligation, فَرْضَ عَيْن فَرِيضَةٌ عَيْن, upon him to learn the Quran. This is something mentioned by Sheikh Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullahi alayhi and others. In fact, Al-Imam Al-Shatibi, Abu Ishaq Al-Shatibi from the 8th century, he says in Muwafaqat, in the very first few pages actually, he says, whomsoever his understanding of the Arabic language is basic, then his knowledge of the Sharia would be basic. And whomsoever's understanding of the Arabic language is mediocre, his knowledge of the Sharia would be mediocre. And likewise, if his knowledge is vast, then his knowledge and understanding of the Sharia would also be vast.
So if you go to those PhDs in Islamic studies who don't know the Arabic language, according to Shatibi, the knowledge is basic.
Well, essentially, I mean, this is also a problem that we have in modern day, which is that we equate someone who carries these PhDs as someone who literally is an alim or a scholar. So the reality is far from the truth. What it means is that, yes, a person, he may have spent 4, 5, 6 years researching a particular issue, particular mas'ala, in a particular science, in a particular chapter in that science, and he understands that, alhamdulillah. But we've seen even in Medina, we used to find professors, unfortunately, some of them, alhamdulillah, this wasn't the common group, very few minority, they would come and lecture us, and unfortunately they were missing the basics themselves. of the Islamic sciences. Yeah, absolutely. We found massive blunders. We found some, professors who make massive blunders, and they didn't bat an eyelid to it as well. And in fact, you have Sheikh, many of the mashayikh who say.
Are you going to expose them now? The guys
Wallahi, first, akhi, no one is free from mistakes.
Yeah, it's true.
Wallahi, no one is free from mistakes. Everyone's thing is taken from and rejected except for the companion of this grave. As Imam Malik pointed to the grave of the Messenger of Allah. And in fact, many times I remember we had lessons in Masjid Nabawi, in the Prophet's Masjid, and my teachers would use the same thing and they would point to the grave.
Let me ask you now. Someone wants to memorize the Quran, how would you advise them?
Firstly, al-ikhlas, sincerity. This task is a great task, a magnificent task, a task that only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He chooses those that are beloved to Him to embark on this.
Okay.
And many embark on it, subhanAllah, but very few complete.
Practically, what did they do?
Ikhlas.
No, what
Sincerity. Why do I keep going on about this for, bro?
No, go on.
Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he mentions that إِنَّمَا يَحْفَظَ الرَّجْعَ عَلَى قَدْرِ نِيَّتِهِ, that a person only memorizes according to his intention. So if your intention is sincere, that you only seek the face of Allah, the pleasure of Allah Jalla wa Ala, then you will find this barakah come into your head. But that being said, subhanAllah, obviously it's the brain is literally like any other muscle, right? If you work out the brain a lot, then by memorizing more, then it will become easier. I remember myself when I first started, I'll use myself as an example, because I can't speak about other people. I remember when I first started memorizing the Quran, it would take me 1 hour to memorize. Do you know how many pages?
1 page.
Half a page. Literally 1 hour, subhanAllah.
That's about standard.
And alhamdulillah, after a few months, subhanAllah, it would take me maybe 5 minutes to memorize a whole page. 5 or 6 minutes.
Maybe you started to develop the
it comes with time. The malik is a hifd. Just like anything, if you work on it, it will grow and it will strengthen. Alhamdulillah.
What was your way of memorizing? Or what did you find easy?
What I used to do, I used to memorize the part that I'm memorizing. Either say, let's take a page for example.
Do you listen to it?
Actually, at the time, I didn't really listen that much.
And is that a mistake?
Yes and no. I believe if a person has fluency in it, then it's fine, as long as you can read. And the reality is, you cannot memorize the Quran by yourself in the sense that you cannot assume that you've read it correctly. You will have to read it to someone anyways.
That's right.
So it's important to listen to it first, inshallah ta'ala. And of course, I would advise Mishawi, Al-Masri, the Egyptian, and Husri as well. Yes. The Egyptian, there's a saying that the Quran was reviewed in Saudi Arabia, and it was memorized in Pakistan, and it was read in Egypt. MashaAllah, tabarakallah.
هذا غير صحيح.
So this is what I would recommend. I'd recommend listening and repeating, and of course, more practically speaking, a person who memorizes that particular page in that day, then I strongly advise that he repeats that page at least 20 to 30 times in the day, and for him to read it in all of his prayers. And then of course the second day, he'd review that another 20 or 30 times, plus memorizing the new page, and it would be like a pyramid. Then at the third day, you'd review what you memorized on the first page, maybe 10 times, likewise on the second page, 20 times, and then so on and so forth. And maybe leave one.
So they have to have a program for muraja and hifz. For revision and for
these two things are done hand in hand. You have to revise and memorize at the same time. Memorizing is easier than reviewing. Now this is a problem a lot of people fall into. They think, alhamdulillah, they're memorizing so easy, mashallah, tabarakallah. But when it comes to revision,
they're not doing it,
and they find the hifz weak. They find their memorization very, very weak. The reality should not be. They should be hand in hand. And the reality is, subhanAllah, also, many of the qurra, the reciters of the Quran, the hafaz, they say that if a person goes over the whole Quran 100 times by memory, then he will not need to look at the Quran again. It will be firmly embedded in him. Firmly, man, this is true.
That's memorizing the Quran. What about Arabic language? We're going to do something in Salam Plus, isn't it?
We are going to do something in Salam Plus, alhamdulillah. We're going to have a flagship Arabic program going through Al-Arabiya Bayna Yadayk with a few supplementary books, inshallah ta'ala, in a format I don't believe that has been completed like this as of yet, alhamdulillah. So inshallah, something quite revolutionary, groundbreaking. We hope everyone can take part in it.
Part of the Islamic Renaissance?
Inshallah. Why not? Why not?
Right, let's start with, there's 2 or 3 things I found quite interesting. Obviously you went to Medina, so we might as well start with that. But here what I found interesting with the Azhar curriculum is that it's pretty basic in a sense, right? I mean, there's 4 years, as you can see here. What they do fiqh, madhabi fiqh, so probably do
We're going to upload this on the website, right?
We'll put it on the website.
Possibly on the website. Or
we'll try and put links of this thing. So what they seem to be doing here in the first term, second term, they do fiqh, they choose a madhab, one book, they go through that book.
So they study a madhab first.
They study a madhab first, they go through the book.
This is how the ulama of the past studied fiqh.
Yes.
They did not study fiqh through comparative fiqh straight away.
No way.
They studied one madhab, they mastered the madhab, and when they mastered the madhab, they went on. Look at, for example, Sheikh Ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullah alayhi. He was a Hanbali at the beginning. In fact, he is still a Hanbali. In fact, the later ulama, the later Hanabila refer to him as Sheikh. Whenever you read their books, they say, for example, قال Sheikh, the Sheikh said this. Who are they referring to? Ibn Taymiyyah. So his speech is at least a wajh in the madhab. It has a lot of weight in it.
Yeah, so they've got something here. It says usul al-fiqh.
Usul al-fiqh, principles of jurisprudence.
Yeah, so they probably choose one book and they go through it for the full.
This would be depending on the madhab, right?
Yes, it will be madhabi, yeah.
Usul al-fiqh is, they have two styles of writing. They call it tariqatul mutakallimin, the way of the scholars of kalam. Kalam meaning Islamic theology.
Yeah.
And this refers to generally the Shafi'iyya.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, and of course grouped with them, the Malikis, the Hanbalis as well, right? In fact, the differences are not quite minute between them. And the other school is the tariqatul, they call it tariqatul fuqaha, the way of the fuqaha, the scholars of fiqh. And of course, it's referring to the Hanafi fuqaha.
Right.
Now, the way the Hanafi fuqaha actually derived the usul al-fiqh was that they looked at the actual issues of fiqh, and then they derived the usul, the principles based on that. Whereas the other group actually looked the opposite. So they looked at the usul and derived the fiqh from that. Or the fiqh and then derived it.
Then they have fiqh muqaran, so comparative fiqh. And then they have nahw and sarf, which is Arabic language and grammar and morphology in particular.
Excellent.
So this is what I spoke to one of the students there. What it seems to be the case is that they go through like one book. It's their bread and butter. They go through it.
Yeah.
And then maybe near the end of the third year, fourth year, they transition to another book. But they don't go into too many books. It's trying to master a few things rather than
many
doing lots of things and not doing them properly. So can you tell us about that? Because we're going to be mentioning a lot of books now.
Okay.
And what I don't want the impression to be is that we have to read all of those books.
Absolutely.
And we can go through all of those books.
Yeah.
And that we need to go through all of those books.
No.
What do we need to read?
It's a case, to be honest, the way it seems that Azhar have structured the curriculum is similar to how Medina, Islamic Medina University, have structured the curriculum.
And how have
many of the Islamic seminaries across the world have a similar routine.
Yeah.
And that is that each kulliyah, each faculty have a specific curriculum that is specific to them. That consists of maybe 2 or 3 different books. But that's the bread and butter.
Yeah.
You know, we study these on a near daily basis for 4 years.
Right.
4 years. And most of the time we complete it, sometimes we don't complete it.
Yes.
For example, in Hadith, our bread and butter was 2 books mainly. Al-Muharrar fil Hadith by
which had to be
memorized.
memorized.
What is Muharrar fil Hadith? It's like Bulugh al-Maram. It's a book of Hadith, and we studied the fiqh of that, roughly 1200 Hadith. And it had to be memorized, and we studied the fiqh of that, and the riwayah of it, you know, the understanding, the takhrij of it, or the, you know, extrapolation of the Hadith, the authenticity of the Hadith, etc., etc. Yeah. Likewise, we studied Mustalah al-Hadith, the sciences of Hadith. Now, our main book that we studied was Tadrib al-Rawi by As-Suyuti. Imam Suyuti, the Suyuti passed in 911, right?
That's great.
Oh, mashallah. Jazakallah khair. Yeah, so that was our bread and butter. We studied that overnight. And we had other supplementary subjects that were specific to Hadith. For example, we studied Al-Wad' fil Hadith, fabrication of Hadith. We studied that for 1 year. We studied Jarh Ta'deel, the science of narrator criticism. And
did you use it to do it?
No,
did you use it to
absolutely not, ya Sheikh. You know,
we use it on the layman.
Huh?
You can use it on the layman.
Well, this is unfortunately, this is a crime. This is a crime that has been committed in our day and age, which is that we take the rules of Jarh Ta'deel, which were meant for a specific time, which was a time of riwayah, a time when hadith was being transmitted, and we now apply it. We apply it to the laity people, subhanallah, without any right whatsoever. Jarh Ta'deel, yes, it has its places when it comes to istishhad and witnesses and testimony in courts of law, etc.
Yes.
Unfortunately, now there's a big innovation that the asl, or the basic principle in Muslim is what?
It's bid'ah.
Is a'udhu billah. This is a bid'ah. Nas'Allah al-afiyah. This is wallah.
Depends on where he lives, brother.
Which is even more for.
No, but if he lives in Pakistan, he's probably a mubtada.
And if he lives in Saudi?
No, he's on the right.
Oh, so he's on the haqq in Saudi, in Pakistan he's not. What about Australia? Or America?
No, all 73 sects here, brother.
Subhanallah.
No, all 73 sects.
So you see, this is a bid'ah. This is a janayah. This is a crime, subhanallah. And we have to really find out who from the Salaf is.
But this is the thing, even...
Where is the...
Exactly, who says this? And moreover, we're going to come to it in Jarh Ta'deel.
Hopefully we don't spend too long on it, inshallah.
No, they say that the asl is jahala, isn't it? So it's ignorance. You don't know what the hal of the person is. Right? But if it's ignorance, then you say it's bid'ah. Isn't that a sifa? Isn't that an additional thing that you addition? It's a contradiction.
It's an absolute contradiction.
How can you say you don't know what his belief is, but at the same time you know that he's a mubtada? He's an
Where
innovator.
is the Iqamatul Hujjah?
No, there's no Iqamatul Hujjah. Yulhaqu bihim.
Yulhaqu bihim.
They are what they. Yeah.
So this is contradiction with another contradiction.
It's a complete contradiction.
It's a complete contradiction.
Why is it a contradiction?
Allahu Akbar. This we have to have a separate jalsa for.
No.
A separate sitting for this.
But that's
inshallah.
what,
And
I
hope
guess
that we go
this is
through
a problem, which highlights another issue away from that discussion, which is the issue of how knowledge can be used in a wrong way.
Absolutely. You know, this is a perfect example. Jarh Ta'deel, akhi, it is one of these subjects, subhanAllah, literally, it's like
How would you translate Jarh Ta'deel for the people?
the science of critique.
Okay.
Criticizing narrators,
Yes.
right? And you know, doing ta'deel of them, or
Mhm.
affirming their positive characteristics and attributes.
Yeah.
It's a double-edged sword.
Mm.
You know, the thing is, with any knowledge, it can be used in the right way and it can be used in the wrong way, unfortunately. And the problem is, to be honest with you, is the teachers who teach the sciences in the first place to the students.
Mm.
You know, we're not. The problem is, ilm now has become such an academic exercise
Mhm.
that we have lost the aspect of tarbiyah in it. There's
And
no
spirituality.
Spirituality,
Bringing close to
tarbiyah,
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
cultivation, nurturing the student who doesn't know anything. We are nurturing them.
Yes.
And unfortunately, if that incorrect tarbiyah is given to them, no tarbiyah at all, bro.
Yeah.
And this is the reality of what we've seen, subhanAllah, in Medina. No tarbiyah, unfortunately, is given to many tulab al-ilm students of Notre Go there. Subhanallah, they will come back and they will cause corruption, fasad. And this is exactly what we're seeing now. People being called mubtadi', innovators without any evidence, and su'adhan of the Muslimin. And
That's right.
Allahu musta'an.
So let's get. We talked about kind of Azhar. They don't really have. They seem to have a rotating reading list depending on what the madhab they're doing in that year.
Yeah.
I think you can choose, in fact, what method
Yeah,
you want to do. Or
to
something
my
like that.
knowledge. You can.
Yeah, and so you're saying, just to kind of cover what you guys went through in Medina.
Yeah.
What were the you said the staple books that you guys went
So
through?
that was in Hadith what we
Yeah,
went
let me
through.
write it down here.
Barakallahu feek. That's
No. Make sure I memorize them next time I see them. Yeah?
So in Hadith,
Yeah.
we, as I said before, we went through Tadrib al-Rawi and we went through Al-Muharrar fil Hadith. These were the main two books that we went through. Every faculty has their own particular books. For example, let's take Kulliyat al-Sharia, the faculty of Sharia. Now,
So you're talking about, before you go to the faculty of Sharia, you're talking about here, right? You're talking about the Hadith college, right?
I'm talking about the faculty of Hadith, the Hadith college.
Okay. So Tadrib al-Rawi, yeah?
Tadrib al-Rawi.
Did you go through that throughout the 4 years?
I believe so, yes. I mean, I think the first year, I don't believe we went through it. The last 3 years, we went through it. I think first it was just introductory subject.
Okay. So what other books did you go through for the whole year, the 4 years?
So we went to the Barawi and Muharrar fil Hadith. We went through books in Jarh Ta'deel. We went through the book of Sheikh Abdul Aziz Abdul Latif, rahimahullah, Jarh Ta'deel.
What's that called, sorry?
ضوابط الجرح, Principles in Jarh wa Ta'deel. Principles in Jarh wa Ta'deel. We went through Usul al-Takhrij, you know, how to extrapolate Hadith, how to find the authenticity of Hadith. Also, that was a Naqd fil Hadith, another subject we went through, which is criticizing critique of Hadith critique, basically.
Yes.
We went through fabrication, understanding of fabrication in Hadith, how it occurs, why it occurs, the rulings placed on these Hadith, etc., etc. Also, we went through a lot of things in Fiqh, separate to Fiqh of Hadith. We discussed. We went through actually Bidayat al-Mujtahid by Ibn Rushd, the grandson, Al-Hafid, Al-Maliki. And this is actually the main book that was taught in the faculty of Sharia as well.
So it was Maliki?
It was Maliki, rahimahullah. You know, you probably read some of his work to have it. Incoherence of the Incoherence and other books. Like, and so we went through that, alhamdulillah. We didn't complete it. We went through certain chapters of it. Whereas the difference with us and Kulliyat al-Sharia is that this was their main book. So instead of Muharrar fil Hadith,
It's really weird that you went through Ibn Rushd's works, isn't it?
he was a great scholar of Islam.
Yeah,
And he had his errors in Aqeedah, of course. But he was a good. That's not to take away from that which is good. See, the thing about us and Sunnah is that we take the good from those that we can, and we leave the bad.
This is a qaida, bid'ah.
You know, the thing is, we have to look at the Ummah and how they acted upon these things.
No.
Otherwise, eventually, what will happen? We'll start burning the books of Ibn Hajar. We'll start burning the books of Imam Nawawi, which was done, believe it or not, in Medina. Sometime
Did
ago.
it? Did you witness this?
I didn't witness it myself, but it was done many years back. And so it leads to that stage, subhanAllah. So we have to look, you know, sometimes not necessarily about evidences, but it's about how the ulama understood these evidences,
It's true.
how they acted upon it. How did the ummah understand these principles? You have 14 years, 100 years behind you. You can't just ignore it and think that you're going to come with something new now, or the correct understanding that no one preceded you with at all.
SubhanAllah.
And this is a manhaj that's adopted mainly by the Zahiriyya.
The literalists.
The literalists, who believe it's permissible to do what we call ihdath qawl thalith, or to bring a new opinion on an issue based on the evidence.
Okay, what I'm going to do now, we've talked about what you've kind of got something for the Hadith college. You said you're going to quickly cover the Sharia college.
Sharia college is similar.
Okay.
It's similar. I mean, their main book, as I mentioned, Bidayat al-Mujtahid, the beginning of a Mujtahid, and also Rawdat al-Nadir in Usul al-Fiqh. Rawdat al-Nadir in Usul al-Fiqh by Ibn Qudama al-Maqdisi al-Hanbali, which is one of the main books in Usul for the Hanabila. The interesting thing is that us in Faculty of Hadith, we only went through one term in Usul al-Fiqh, whereas they studied it over 4 years.
I see.
They studied it, which is why generally, subhanAllah, some people ask me, they're like, oh, Sheikh Mohammed, man, I want to go to the Faculty of Hadith, do you recommend me? And believe it or not, my answer may shock you. I actually say to them, don't go. Don't go to the Faculty of Hadith.
What would you prefer?
I would say to them, generally, go straight to the Faculty of Sharia.
I don't know.
Unless you have a decent base in the Islamic sciences beforehand, and you finish the Quran to the extent that you can memorize Hadith, then go to the Faculty of Hadith. Otherwise, Faculty of Hadith will consume you. You won't have much time to study outside.
Yeah.
Of course, most of the Talib al-Ilm that people do is in Masjid Nabawi, the Prophet's Masjid sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and with the ulama of Medina. Unfortunately, in Faculty of Hadith, the workload is quite a lot sometimes, which is why the dropout rate is quite high.
By the way, Ibn Qudama, so you're saying now, Rawdat al-Nadr, this is a book of Usul al-Fiqh.
Yes.
Let's be frank with the people. We're going to mention, in the reading list I got from Sheikh Mohammed Osman, we're going to mention some books. I'm going to quick fire, just mention them, and you tell me something about them, because that's, I think,
if I know something about them.
I'm sure you do from the last episode, right?
Inshallah.
That we did for 2 hours, and we were talking too much about it.
Okay, inshallah. Let's just take a quick thing from each one.
What I was going to say was that, look, for instance, you have Rawdat al-Nadr, that's one Usul book. What is Usul first?
So we mentioned that already. Usul al-Fiqh is the principles of jurisprudence.
Fine. So, you don't, this is the point, you don't need to go through 100 Usul books, do you?
Absolutely.
In order to understand Usul.
You know, it's important, bro, to distinguish between, and this goes for anything in knowledge, right?
Yes.
You have someone who specializes in a branch of knowledge,
Yes.
and you have someone who doesn't.
Yes.
And he may specialize in another branch of knowledge,
Yes.
right? We need to differentiate between the two. Nowadays, it's very rare that a person will specialize in all the sciences.
Yes.
It's pretty much unheard of. Very few ulama, that even I have sat with, have ever reached this level, okay? So now what do we have? We have to focus our efforts onto one particular science, whereas we have a little taste of the other sciences, okay? We have a taste of
a base.
A base.
Yes.
We can understand, alright? So this is the key thing.
Like an MMA.
Okay, well this is not my field, but okay.
No, you do a bit of training. I know you do it together. The Sheikh does training in MMA.
Like
MMA.
Not as much as you. I'm more BJJ.
MMA.
Mashallah.
No. At MMA, for instance, if you just know the ground game, and you don't know how to defend yourself standing up,
okay, like me,
you get knocked out. Don't tell the enemy is your weakness.
No. Allah Jalla wa Ala is our
He's lying. Alhamdulillah.
Allah.
So you see what I'm saying? Same thing. If you know how to strike really well, but you don't know how to grapple, you get taken down.
Absolutely.
Same thing with the
wrestling defense, for example.
Yeah. Football. If you know how to run and dribble, but you don't know how to shoot.
Yeah, the principle is the same.
Simple. You have to have
absolutely,
something. Right?
Absolutely. Which is why you should take from every science something, but focus on one particular thing. Focus on one particular thing.
That's good. So here.
So why did we mention this for?
We mentioned it because we
master
specialism. You're a believer of specialism.
Absolutely, yeah. Master, especially in this day and age, right? Especially for the Westerns. I'll be honest with you. It's different from someone who has grown up as a talib ilm.
Yeah.
He's finished memorizing the Quran by the age of 10, and his whole life is talib ilm from the get go. This person is treated differently to someone who just starts when they're in their late teens, for example, like myself. So I would advise that that you master one particular book in each science.
Okay.
If possible 2, if possible 3.
Okay, say this again. This is a good piece of advice, right?
Absolutely.
Because we're going to be mentioning a lot of books.
Yes.
You're saying don't read all of this.
I would say, keep reading for the rest of your life, but in terms of what you spend your time mastering, then don't. Master 2 or 3 or 4 potential books in each science, to the extent that you have a decent, strong base in each science.
Yes.
But focus on one. Spend most of your time on one particular science.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
That's good advice, inshallah. Let's go to the reading list of the Shanaqita, the Shanqitis. Let's start.
Muhammad al-Hassan.
Yeah, he's the one who kind of done this. I've translated it for us, inshallah. And he did talk about, having a base in all the knowledges and stuff like that. And he talks about there being different kinds of knowledge, maqasid and masail.
Also, knowledge that are sought in and of itself, and sciences that are supplementary to support these sciences. For example, the science of hadith.
Right. The
science of hadith is there to support your understanding of the hadith.
Right.
Likewise, Tafsir, Uloom al-Quran, the science of the Quran, are there to support your understanding of the Quran.
Okay. So he mentions a lot of ulum.
So actually, on this, you shouldn't actually focus on the wasa'il, the means, more than the goal in and of itself. This is something we fall into.
For instance, like, right, let me give you one example, right? Sorry, I'll cut you.
No, not at all.
The Quran itself
No.
is, if we want to understand the meaning of the Quran,
No.
tafsir of the Quran, what would this be?
To understand the tafsir.
To understand the actual meaning of the Quran.
Okay, so yeah, in terms of how you go about studying it.
No, what kind of knowledge would that be?
Alright, so generally you would study, firstly, my personal advice would be to, Allah Akbar. My personal advice would be to study something very small, like a very summarized tafsir.
No, what I mean, is this a are we doing, is this an object, is this a means to the ends, or is it the ends itself?
It's a means to an end.
Okay.
In the sense to understand meaning, to understand the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in that sense, yes, it is the end of itself.
Yeah.
But the end of itself is to understand what Allah
For instance, someone learns Arabic
in
order to understand the Quran.
Absolutely. So this is a means
to the end.
Right? Which is to understand the Quran.
Yes. Okay. Let's start with the Quran. He talks about, he mentions a few books, like 4 or 5 books on the rasm of the Quran, which means basically the print of the Quran. So he mentions. So he mentions.
It's a science that's not really taught nowadays.
Yeah.
Just before I left, actually, Medina.
What is this?
It's a science of understanding the Quran, how it's written, the print of it, how it's written. It's a very specialized science.
Okay. So we won't spend time on that.
I want to spend much time.
Okay. Let's start with tafsir itself.
Okay. So tafsir. No.
So he mentions here different levels, right? So it's beginner. So he, for example, he says look at a muqaddimah. Yeah. On usul al-tafsir.
Okay. So now he's going to usul al-tafsir. Okay.
So this is what he says, right?
No.
He says المقدمة في أصول التفسير لابن تيمية. Ibn Taymiyyah. So this is what he says, right?
No.
He says المقدمة في أصول التفسير لابن تيمية. Ibn Taymiyyah has a book called Usul al-Tafsir. It's a very small book.
المقدمة في أصول التفسير. It's a decent size.
It tells you how you kind of
certain principles to apply in understanding tafsir. Certain principles to understand tafsir. But it's important to note that Uloom al-Quran, the sciences of Quran, is more vast than this.
Yes.
Usul al-Tafsir is a science from the sciences of the Quran. Okay. Right. So inshallah
So he uses the Muqaddimah of Qurtubi. He says if you read that,
ممتاز,
which is the preface.
The introduction to Tafsir al-Qurtubi.
Ibn Ashur.
Ibn Ashur as well, Tunisi, I believe.
Yes.
Who passed away not too long ago.
He's got a good. He speaks about how he does tafsir of the Quran.
Absolutely, which is good. In fact, you know what Sheikh Mohammed Osman actually pointing to is actually amazing. This can be applied in every single science.
Yeah.
Because you literally, the problem we have is that we would delve straight into books without really focusing on the introduction that the author himself states. Within the introduction, most authors actually state the principles that they're going to use.
It's like the nuts and bolts, if you like.
Exactly. To actually write their book, to actually present it.
Yes.
And unfortunately, sometimes we go in there, we superimpose our understanding, our pre-existing conceptions and principles on the speech of that particular author, which is completely wrong.
And he also mentions Muqaddimah of Ibn Jawzi. So he says it's on 2 pages.
Muqaddimah Ibn Jawzi in Zad al-Masir. Very immense tafsir.
2 pages, he says.
Yeah, the tafsir itself is immense, mashallah. It was actually, I quoted it quite often in the videos we did on Zad al-Night. As Ibn Jawzi, essentially what he does is that he summarizes, because it's a summary of tafsir al-Tabari really, and that he collates all of the aqwal, all of the different opinions in every single ayah, and he lists them. For example, in this particular ayah, there's 4 opinions, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Sometimes we the evidences of each.
Actual tafsir starts with number 1, basic level, Jalalain, and then he says in order to understand mufradat, the singular words of the Quran, you have Isfahani, mufradat al-Quran.
Isfahani mumtaz actually.
Yeah, and Tasheel Ibn Jawzi.
Tasheel Ibn Jawzi, yeah. So generally, when it comes to after understanding mufradat, what does mufradat mean?
Singular words? Singular
words that the meaning is quite difficult or obscure.
Okay.
And there's a number of books that have been written. Obviously, the Shaykh, he favours Al-Isfahani. There's a book on this, which is excellent. There's also that written by Abu Bakr al-Sijistani. Also, modern day, I've actually written Sheikh Mohammed al-Khudairi. Amr ibn Yazid al-Khudairi. He has a Siraj, which is absolutely amazing, very easy to understand. Also, Shaykha Kamila al-Kawari. She has also a beautiful book on this as well. And even Abu Bakr al-Sijistani is actually one of the favourite ones in the science. And what recently I think you have Sheikh Ibrahim Shirbini. He actually reformatted this in a modern way, in like a table, for everyone, broken down in surah by surah, easy for memorization. This is actually one of the first levels in understanding the Quran. It's to understand the singular words. The second is to understand the asbab al-nuzul, or the reasons for revelation. Right? So if you want to give a quick outline, inshallah, to summarize how to study tafsir. The first thing would be to understand the singular words, the gharaib of the Quran, the difficult words, which we mentioned now. The second would be to go through the asbab al-nuzul, the reasons for revelation. What does that mean? That means going through the ahadith that have been revealed.
Like Al-Wahidi wrote a book.
Al-Wahidi, but Al-Wahidi...
he's got some weak hadiths and stuff.
Fabricated, he quotes sometimes from the Shia and others. Leave that to one side. In this particular thing, I would recommend Sheikh Mohammed rahimahullah ta'ala, who recently, passed away recently. He wrote a book called Al-Musnad Al-Sahih, Asbab al-Nuzul al-Quran. A very beautiful book, mashallah. If he memorizes the ahadith and he links it to the ayat, then alhamdulillah he's achieved khair kathir, he's achieved a lot of goodness, alhamdulillah. Al-Musnad Al-Sahih, Asbab al-Quran. And then after this level, so these are two things.
Yes.
The third,
he mentions the third is like mukhtasars. Or the second level up is like Ibn Kathir, As-Sabuni, all these kind of differences.
yeah, so some actually, yeah, okay, طيب, you can study this as well. I would actually advise that he study that a person goes to the level preceding this. So he mentioned, for example, Jalalain,
Yes.
which is a small tafsir written by Jalaluddin Suyuti, and he completed it. It was originally written by Jalaluddin Mahalli, which is nice. Also today you have a Tafsir al-Muyassar, which is a beautiful summarized tafsir. You have also Tafsir al-Sheikh Mohammed Osman, a very summarized tafsir. A lot of it's been translated to English as well. It's more of a thematic tafsir, I would say. So it's very good, mashallah, tabarakallah. Then after that you go to the next level. Now the Shaykh, he favors the summaries of Tafsir ibn Kathir. For example, you have Umdat al-Tafsir by Sheikh Ahmed Shakir, you have the summary by Mubarak Furi, you have the summary by a lot of ulama summarize this, Sheikh Mustafa al-Adawi and others. Obviously the asl, the original book, Tafsir ibn Kathir, I believe it's more favoured, especially for students who want to read the original, which I believe has been translated now.
Yeah, it's translated. The abridged version is translated.
The abridged by Mubarak Furi, right?
The one is translated by.
No, not translation. The actual book. The abridged by who? I think it's Mubarak Furi.
Possibly.
One we do, yeah, mashallah. So that, alhamdulillah, it's khair kathir, mashallah.
Sahib Rahim al-Makhtoum.
Rahimahullah ta'ala. And then after this,
Yeah.
it would be to go into the tafasir that are
big
more in
ones.
depth. The big ones, yani.
So we're talking about. For some reason, he puts a Sa'di here, but really a Sa'di is quite basic, isn't it?
It is very basic. Very basic. Very basic understanding.
At-Tabari, he says the base of all tafasir.
No.
It's not good for beginners.
Absolutely not. It's not good for beginners at all. But it's the base. Literally everyone who came after Tabari relied upon Tabari in his tafsir. I strongly recommend in this level that a student goes through Zad al-Masir by Ibn al-Jawzi, rahimahullah ta'ala. Zad al-Masir, again, as we mentioned it briefly, it's very good, mashallah, tabarakallah. He can summarize this. Also, to be honest, in the level before this, not only do you have Ibn Kathir, but you have Fath al-Qadir as well by Shawkani. A lot of Mufassirun actually say that Fath al-Qadir by Shawkani is a summary of Tafsir al-Qurtubi, with added addition to the lughawiyat and the linguistic aspects.
Qurtubi's tafsir is quite massive, isn't it?
Absolutely, it's massive, mashallah, tabarakallah.
And he specializes, he
In
really
fiqh.
focused on fiqh.
In fiqh, yeah. It's more of a, I mean, this is a science, a sub-science in and of
Which is
itself.
fiqh for the people that don't know.
Fiqh is jurisprudence, the rules, etc.
Tahrir al-Tanwir.
Ibn Ashur, rahimahullah ta'ala,
What do you think of
mentioned this. Again, quite advanced.
Yeah.
It focuses heavily on balagha, so I wouldn't advise that we jump straight into it.
طيب, this will suffice.
This will suffice, inshallah, for tafsir.
Inshallah, perfect. Okay, no problem. Let's take a look at the something which we kind of, let's not spend too much time on this. Tajweed.
Tajweed, for example, I advise to study Tuhfat al-Atfal by Sulman Jamzuri. Very summarized, small poem in Tajweed. And after that, you can study.
What is Tajweed?
Tajweed, the rules of recitation.
And how? Why is it important?
It's important to read the Quran as it was revealed. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed it to Jibreel, and Jibreel recited it, of course, to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. It is the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
الأخذ بالتجويد
حتم لازم. It's there's disagreement on whether this is correct or not, but
Yeah.
it's easy to say.
There's two nusakh for that.
Yeah, not even this, whether or not this hukum is.
Oh, right.
No, some say actually that not a mufti Ibn Jazari, and there's a long discussion about it. But leave that to one side. The point is, it's important. You have Ibn Jazari as well.
What does he mean by Jazari says that you have to read the tajweed. That's his opinion.
Yeah, and it's correct. You do have to read the tajweed.
Yeah.
You do have to read. If a
من
person,
لم يجود القرآن آثم.
whoever doesn't read the Quran is sinful.
Yeah.
And this is where the discussion is. We leave that for another time.
All right. So for now, the two kind of poems that people go through, major ones, Jazari.
Tuhfat al-Atfal and Jazari al-Muqaddam al-Jazari.
They should know what's going on with those two. Yeah.
You know, the thing is that's quite interesting, subhanAllah, because I've come across people who haven't studied these texts before.
Yes, but they don't.
They know tajweed. They recite Quran better than those who know the text and memorized it.
So why is that?
The answer to that is exactly what Ibn Jazari says in his poem.
وليس بينه
وَلَيْسَ
وبين
بَيْنَهُ وَبَيْنَ تَرْكِهِ إِلَّا
رياضة امرئ بفقه.
ما شاء الله تبارك
Still got it
الله.
there. Which means?
Which means that there's no difference between a person who recites it really well and a person who doesn't really know, except that he exercises his rules.
So in other words, doing the actual recitation and reading it to a sheikh. That's the most important thing.
Listening.
Getting the corrections.
That's it. Listening and reading. Listening and reading. Listening and reading. Remember, all of these texts, they're not goals in and of itself. It's a means to an end.
Right.
If you achieve the goal, alhamdulillah, by different means, alhamdulillah, you've achieved the goal, alhamdulillah.
طيب, so جزرية تحفظ الأطفال. Also he got كتاب الحصري, wrote a book. Okay, الحصري wrote a book called كتاب الحصري. I don't know if that's the name of the book, but he wrote a book. Obviously, listening to the things itself. For those who want to do قراءات, which is a fan in and of itself, there's a Shatibiyya.
There's a Shatibiyya.
It's a deep science that requires something in and of itself.
It requires a lot of dedication in and of itself, and
a lot of memorization.
A lot of memorization as well, and I believe that there's a resurgence in the science actually, alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
And nowadays
there is another video that we've actually done on this in qira'at with Brother Ahmed.
MashaAllah.
Yeah, which people can see. He's kind of explaining what the qira'at are, etc. on a basic level. So we're not going to spend too much time on that because people can refer to that video, inshallah.
Inshallah.
So that's kind of like we've done. Yeah. If someone knows these mutun and exercises and Quran, خلاص.
خير كثير إن شاء الله.
إن شاء الله.
خير كثير.
طيب, أحكام.
أحكام يعني rulings.
Rulings now related to, I think, the hadith here.
No, it's actually, I think it's tafsir. So what some
is this for the
yeah.
Kitab Jassas?
Jassas al-Hanafi al-Bakr Jassas. What some of the mufassirun did was that they singled out special tafsirs which focus only on the ayat, the verse in the Quran that have ahkam in them. Right? So they didn't do tafsir of the rest of the Quran.
Right, okay.
Okay, so for example, the common ones tafsir by Ibn Arabi al-Maliki, the judge, rahimahullah ta'ala, was Ibn Arabi, is Ibn Arabi, the Sufi, Ibn Arabi al-Maliki, the Qadi, also Kitab al-Jassas, Abu Bakr al-Jassas, and others. You have today recently printed tafsir al-Tafsir wal-Bayan wal-Bayan wal-Tafsir by Sheikh Abdul Aziz al-Tarifi, and others.
طيب, we got here al-Hadith. So let's go through the hadith.
Hadith, the first text I think the Shaykh put here was 40 hadith.
Yeah,
40 and Nawawi, of course, is actually more than 40, but they summarize in Arabic to 40. You should memorize this. Each hadith is an asl, it's a fundamental principle within this religion in and of itself.
What Umdat al-Ahkam?
Umdat al-Ahkam by Abd al-Ghani al-Maqdisi is actually slightly larger. It contains roughly 400 hadith. Hadith that are only present in Bukhari, Sahih Bukhari, and Sahih Muslim, or both. And should be memorized and studied as well, inshallah. And after that, you have books that are more in depth, such as Bulugh al-Maram by Al-Hafid ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, and also you have Al-Muharraf al-Hadith, which is what we study in Kulliyat al-Hadith, which actually some say that Ibn Hajar based Bulugh al-Maram on Muharraf al-Hadith. But the interesting thing is that Ibn Abd al-Hadi, may Allah have mercy upon him, he seems to have placed a stronger emphasis in his book in Ilal al-Hadith. The discrete
Because
deficiencies.
we do find a lot of, with the Bulugh al-Maram, a lot of hadith that are weak.
No, but now you've gone into another issue, which is how do the fuqaha deal with weak hadith?
Yeah.
Do they act upon it, do they not? And in fact, we find yes, they do.
Yeah,
With certain conditions, which is a discussion in and of itself. There's a common misconception of hadith is weak, but ignore it completely. Apart from the fadail al-a'mal.
What about with Hanbalis? What do they say about this?
Imam Ahmad rahimahullah used to act upon weak hadith with certain conditions that are present.
طيب, so here we talk about al-Hakam to 40 hadith. We talk about Taqrib al-Asanid. We're going to mention that again, I think.
Taqrib al-Asanid is a book by Al-Hafid al-Iraqi. Again, it's a similar size to Umdat al-Hakam, roughly 500 hadith. But the reason he wrote it was quite interesting. He actually wrote it so his son can memorize certain asanid, certain chains of narration. He said it is not befitting for a student of knowledge to just know a hadith, but they should know certain chains of narration by memory. So if you put certain chains of narration, they link all of these hadith together. So if a person memorizes these few chains of narrations, he in turn has memorized the change of narrations for 500 hadith.
طيب,
so he wrote it for his son.
And then you mentioned the 6 books, Sunnah books.
Of course.
Sahih Bukhari.
Yes,
what are the 6 Sunnah books? Test book, please.
Sahih, of course, Imam Bukhari, Muhammad Osman Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, which of course they are the two most authentic books after the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then Sunan Abu Dawood, Sunan Nasa'i, Sunan Nasa'i, they say this as well, and there's another way to pronounce it, or Sunan, and then Sunan Ibn Majah. Some replace Sunan Ibn Majah as the 6th book with, I forgot Tirmidhi, Jami' Tirmidhi. So the order would be Tirmidhi would come after Abu Dawood, and after there's difference of opinion in the order of these books in terms of authenticity.
So which would be after the two?
Some say Sunan Abu Dawood,
Yeah.
then Nasa'i, then Tirmidhi. Others
Some
differ.
say.
Other differ. For example, some say the condition of a Nasa'i is stronger than the condition of a Muslim, which is obviously Mubada.
And it's interesting
And
because
then the last would be Ibn Majah. Some replace it. Some replace Ibn Majah with Muwatta of Imam Malik.
because exactly. I was thinking Muwatta Imam Malik. I mean, there's some aqwal of Shafi'i saying that it's one of the most asah kutub or something.
Yeah,
like
the
this.
way they are, many of the muhaddithun interpret this is of course
Muslim,
before
yeah.
Bukhari was authored his Sahih.
Nah. Right. Okay. What we've got here, we've got Shuruh al-Ahadith.
Explanations of hadith.
So
Each
here.
one of these books.
These are some of the books here. Let's read them out first.
So, of course, Fath al-Bari was the explanation by Hafid Ibn Hajar and Sahih Bukhari. It is there's a famous statement by Shawkani, La hijrata ba'd al-Fath. He used the hadith that says there is no migration after the Fath, the conquest of Mecca.
Yeah.
But here he's referring to Fath al-Bari. There is no migration after Ibn Hajar wrote his book, Fath al-Bari.
Okay.
In fact, we're going to mention it later, might as well mention it now, that Shawkani actually wrote a explanation on a book of hadith called Al-Muntaqa by Majduddin ibn Taymiyyah. This was the grandfather of Sheikh Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala. And it's a collection of hadith, quite a lot of hadith, and Shawkani wrote his explanation, he entitled it Nail al-Awtar, right? It's the explanation of these hadith. The interesting thing is that the Shawkani, he seemingly he summarized Fath al-Bari into this explanation, which is quite, so he relied upon it heavily. In fact, everyone who came after Ibn Hajar relied upon Fath al-Bari, and subhanAllah, Ibn Hajar himself, he relied upon those who came before him to write Fath al-Bari, such as Ibn Battal al-Maliki in his explanation and others.
طيب.
نعم. عمدة القاري, al-Aini, there's many other books. For all of these books of hadith, you have the most important explanation. Sharh Sahih Muslim by Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, of course. You have modern day Shah, I think roughly 50 volumes by Sheikh Mohammed Osman, Ethiopian, and of course the commentary also by Sheikh Uthaymeen is recently printed as well.
Okay, and we've got here a lot of stuff from Wali Allah Dahlu.
You know, subhanAllah, the Indian, the scholars, the subcontinent scholars, they have they've done immense khidmah, immense service to the books of hadith.
Do you know what's really interesting about this discussion?
Go on.
In it, we've talked about, it's very inclusive. You know why?
Go on.
In the beginning, we talked about someone who wrote a book, or some of the scholars that you mentioned, one of them was a woman.
Yeah.
And we know from hadith that, and Dhahabi says something really interesting about women in hadith, or hadithat.
No.
He says that ما تكل ما فيهن إلا أربعة or something like this. Only 4 of them have been mentioned. So muhaddithat, in terms of people that do hadith which are women, how many are there?
Many. Allah.
Let's speak about this for a bit.
You know the interesting thing, subhanAllah, is that Al-Dhahabi actually said about Aisha radiallahu anha. He actually said quite amazing. He said that he viewed that Aisha radiallahu anha was one of the most knowledgeable of the Sahaba, if not the most knowledgeable of the Sahaba. And he said that she mastered many different sciences. She mastered medicine, not only Islam, she mastered medicine, she mastered shi'r, poetry, Arabic language. She mastered so many different sciences due to the fact her closest to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the fact that she would be there when many other delegations came to see her, and she would to see him sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and she mastered many things. So this really, we need to look at our sisters. We need to raise their sha'an and encourage. We need to actually encourage, to be honest, our sisters. Wallahi, we need to encourage our sisters to learn. We need them to take up the responsibility of those who came before them, and to not view that their only being in life is, a misconstrued understanding of huquq, of their rights.
Stop. 1 second. Can you mention Salam e-learning? And you got 15 minutes. Salam e-learning that we're going to.
Mentioned already.
Okay, barakallah.
Now, okay, so in terms of hadith and the chain of hadith, which is one of the most important things in our religion, how many women have been involved in chains? How many women? Is it just a few women?
Many. In fact, very rarely would you find a chain of narration. For example, let's take Sahih Bukhari. It goes back to Bint. Many of the chains go back to Bint Umayyad, who was a famous muhadditha in the past. In fact, you would rarely find a chain of narration except that there is a woman mentioned in it. I think Sheikh Mohammed Osman actually has a book recently called Al-Muhaddithat, which is a fantastic. I don't believe actually this research has been done before to this scale. He mentions all of the hadith scholars that were females, mashallah, tabarakallah.
In terms of Mustalah al-Hadith,
Science of hadith, you can start with Bayquni. I personally don't advise people to start with Bayquniya. Yeah, so I don't advise them to start with Bayquniya. This is due to the advice of Sheikh Abdul Karim Khudair, who says, to be honest with you, Bayquniya, unfortunately, even Sheikh Sa'd al-Humayyad, Bayquniya has a lot of errors in it. Well, no, I wouldn't say errors, but he chose opinions for literally nearly every single definition of a particular type of hadith that is problematic.
So what would you do instead then?
نخبة الفقه.
Starting to it, yeah?
نخبة الفقه الحافظ ابن حجر رحمه الله تعالى. Actually, the 2-hour discussion, we spent a long time talking about the different levels in Mustalah hadith, the different times of compilation, and how the science gathered itself. So we'll leave that for another time.
Inshallah. Muqaddimat bil Salah.
Again, Muqaddim al-Salah, so we've gone into it now. They say that science of hadith went through a number of levels. The first level was the time of Khatib al-Baghdadi, who rahimahullah was in the 4th century.
Yes.
He wrote his famous book Al-Kifaya. He gathered everything that was written before him into this one book. After him came Al-Hafid ibn Salah, Sheikh Razuri, Abu Amr, who wrote his book Muqaddim ibn Salah. He didn't actually write it, he was the students who wrote it. He used to teach it.
The Muqaddim wasn't written by him.
It was not written by him. Then everyone who came after him relied upon this book. Some of them critiqued it, some summarized it, some versified it. For example, Alfiyat al-Suyuti, Alfiyat al-Iraqi. طيب يقول راجي ربه المقتدر عبد الرحيم بن حسين الأثري. And everyone, and some explained it as well. For example, Hafid ibn Hajar explained it in Nukat, one of the most important explanations of this kitab, and the critique as well.
Yeah.
And then after Ibn Salah, you have Ibn Hajar rahimahullah. Literally everyone who came after Ibn Hajar relied upon Ibn Hajar for his works. Now,
alright, we don't want to go through it straight away, spend too long on this, because I know this is your field and you like it and you enjoy it.
but we have to talk about Jarh Ta'dil, the modern day application of Jarh Ta'dil. In another, not this halaqah. We have to talk about our brothers, and wallahi, we say that we love these brothers. We love them for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But because we love them for the sake of Allah, we have to point out the errors that they have fallen into, which is the extremism in tabdi', the extremism in labeling other Muslims as mubtadi'a, as people of innovations, unjustly, buhtanan, wa jawran, wa dhulman. And it's a form of oppression that has been committed.
Because they don't do iqamat.
Many reasons, we'll talk about in another halaqah inshallah.
Anyways, now, ilm al-rijal, ilm al-rijali. What are we going to say about this?
So this again is the science of, really it's a science, a sub-science from the science of hadith.
Okay. Is it the same as Jarh Hadith?
Essentially it's the same.
Give us some books that you would read.
For example, it's not really a question of reading books, to be honest with you.
Okay.
It's a question of going to it when needed. These are voluminous books, 20, 30.
What are those books?
Many books. You have Lisan al-Mizan, you have Mizan al-I'tidal by Ibn Hajar, Lisan al-Mizan by Al-Dhahabi, you have Al-Du'afa by Al-Uqayli, Ibn Adi has his Al-Kamil. Many books that you will go to in order to research. You wouldn't read them as books to read. Yeah. A very good introduction to this science actually. No. It's a book called Ilm al-Rijal.
Why?
By Sheikh Mohammed Abdul Aziz al-Zahrani. Muhammad ibn Matar al-Zahrani. May Allah have mercy upon him. For Kulit al-Hadith, the fact of Hadith. We actually studied this book. It's a very nice,
small.
Very small.
I read it.
Inshallah. It's a nice introduction to basically the different types of books that have been written, etc., etc.
Yeah, that's important sometimes to have these madkhal way.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Ilal.
Ilal al-Hadith. What is it? Ilal?
Defect.
No, it's a hidden defect. Literally, it's very obscure, and only the great ulama from hadith, you can count them on one hand. Only very few people from the muhaddithun have actually mastered this science. From them, of course, is Daraqutni. This is the largest book that has been written actually. The interesting thing about it, and perhaps we'll complete this science on this story. Daraqutni rahimahullah, his book Al-Ilal is roughly 20 volumes. 20 volumes, Allahu Akbar. And it's still being produced now. More manuscripts are being found. And the interesting thing is that Daraqutni, he used to come out, literally come out of his house, sit with his students, no books with him at all. They would ask him questions, he would respond, and then the students would write down the answer. And if you open it, open it. Do this today, inshallah. Open it. Look at one hadith. He literally bring for a single hadith. He will bring every single chain of narration that has been mentioned, possibly sources we don't have access to today. And he will go through the intricacies in every single narration, subhanallah.
Yeah.
And he'll sometimes mention hukam, he'll mention the illah in this. And this is something for one hadith. Personally, I've done this. It took me many hours, many days.
So you want me to spend my time doing that? Yeah?
No, just to arrive, just to arrive at the conclusion of Daraqutni.
Yes.
And he did all of this from memory.
Wow.
All of this from memory.
It's too much, man.
And he literally, wallahi, Allah Jalla wa'ala chose certain people for these times. I believe at this time there was none that memorized more than the Qutb the dunya
Allah.
at his time, rahimahullah ta'ala.
Okay, we kind of already spoke about the ahkam from the hadith. We talked about الأحكام بلوغ المرام, منطقة, الأحكام الكبرى, كتاب التحقيق للمجوزي, النووي's مجموع.
لا, Nawawi's majmu' is actually fiqh. It's his explanation of
الأحكام of the hadith.
No,
No?
no, it's actually an explanation of al-Muhaddab by Abu Ishaq al-Shirazi. And Al-Hafiz Nawawi, he didn't actually complete this explanation. This is what we term khilaf al-ali, is comparative fiqh. He didn't complete this explanation, it was completed later by As-Subki, rahimahullah ta'ala.
طيب. عقيدة.
Allahu Akbar. Where should we start?
What did you study with this? What he says is, he mentions, like, obviously,
I advise that Aqidah is firstly studied by understanding the Aqidah of Sunnah wal Jama'ah, and then going through it again with the adillah, the evidences, and then finally looking into the different firaq dhallah and the Ahlul Bid'ah, and understanding their mistakes in Aqidah, and taking it from there. Aqidah is essentially a science that you have to study.
the books that they study in Saudi Arabia, where you study.
Yeah, so they study mainly the books of Sheikh Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, Al-Wasatiyah, for example, which is a great introduction to Aqidah, especially Asma al-Sifat, the names and attributes of Allah. Then Al-Hamawiyah, Sheikh Uthaymeen actually has a nice summary of this, which has been translated. And then Tadmuriyah, which is quite advanced. And then after this, you study Al-Tahawiyah by Abu Ja'far al-Tahawi, who passed away in the year 321. And this is a method that is mubarak. It's a blessed method. Al-Tahawi.
Yeah.
And of course, with this explanation, you will study the explanation of Ibn Abd al-Izz al-Hanafi, who was in the 7th century. And in fact, he based his whole explanation on the works of Sheikh Islam Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn Qayyim, and he didn't disclose it.
The Tahawi one, it seems like everyone's agreeing on that one.
It seems like everyone has agreed. And there are certain sentences which are problematic. Certain mistakes as well, for example, in Iman. يعني he defines Iman as being قول باللسان وتصديق بالجنان. يعني it's belief in the heart and action of the tongue. But يعني some say this is khilaf lafzi. This is يعني just how do you define khilaf lafzi? It's a difference of opinion. It's verbal only. It's a verbal difference of opinion. And these people are known as murji'at al-fuqaha, and it's a long discussion.
Yes. Okay. Well,
but in Aqidah, I think unfortunately the science of Aqidah nowadays has become too academic.
A little bit too boxed in, a bit.
Boxed in, academic.
It's more the letter of the law than the spirit of the law.
Precisely. Yani, subhanAllah, you can find someone who, a lay person, and I don't use the term as derogatory at all, but someone who hasn't studied Aqidah, but yet his Iman is a million times stronger than a student of knowledge who specializes in Aqidah. So the problem is in Aqidah is that we've actually lost the essence of Aqidah. What is Tawheed, Akhi? Muhammad, what is Tawheed?
Are you trying to test me here on my show?
No, what is Tawheed?
Wallahi, there's different aqsam of Tawheed. Is that what you want me to say?
No, I want you to tell me what Tawheed is for you.
Oh, subhanAllah. What? So it's a spiritual question?
Answer how you
will. Uluhiyya and it's not like this.
What does Tawheed mean for you?
It's the purpose of life, man.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Barakallah fi. This is it. It's the reason why you've been created. It's ta'zeem Allah Jalla wa Ala, to venerate and magnify your Creator. The problem is in Aqidah, sometimes we get so bogged down to the intricacies, the categorizations, the differences. The Ash'ari say this, the Maturidiyya say this, Athari Hanbali say this, so and so say this. We lose the purpose of it. We find our hearts have become even harder.
And we're not saying they're not important differences.
They are very important to study.
Yeah.
But let's not lose
at the
focus.
level of the academic, when you become academically able to study.
Absolutely.
For the layman, which you get something very basic, understand it, right? And then
there's actually a good book that was recently written. It's called Al-Matn al-Aqd, literally the treatise on theology by Sheikh Ziyad al-Amid. In fact, inshallah, I'm going to translate this shortly. He actually gave me, I was the first one, probably the only one that is given ijazah on the Matn, alhamdulillah. So
you give me the ijazah after I.
So very summarized book. So that will be translated. Look out for it soon, inshallah.
Inshallah. Oh, okay. Mantiq.
Logic.
Mantiq is logic. To be honest with you, there's lots of things. As-Sulun, Al-Akhdari, and these things.
There's two ways of learning mantiq, bro. There's the traditional way and there's the modern way. And
the modern way probably there's lots of
it's more applicable.
Do you know what, when we talk about philosophy, and there's going to be a whole thing of logic, right?
Absolutely.
There's logic handbooks and these things will come to it.
This is your takhasus, huh?
No, it's not really. But it's what it is that it's the same stuff. It's the same stuff. It's the same stuff. All right. Let's quickly get into the fiqh. Before we do that, Arabic language. We're going to do something on e-learning, aren't we?
We are. So Salam Plus.
To get people The basics, learning acquisition.
So we're going to start from the very basic, which is learning how to read Arabic letters.
Right.
Learning how to pronounce them. And then we're going to the more advanced program, which is going to be roughly 1 year to 2 years, inshallah, and which will go through a series of books to focus on building a person's ability to speak, to read, to listen, and to write as well.
Yes.
And inshallah, it's going to be amazing.
There's lots of dictionaries that are in Arabic, like Al-Misbah al-Munir and Lisan al-Arab, etc., which you kind of already alluded to.
I think, you know what, for the purpose of not rushing this,
in terms of Arabic language, right? We've got traditionally like Al-Ajrumiyya, Ibn Hisham's books, Ibn Hisham's book, and then after that you've got kind of like the Alfiya, and you've also things like Al-Mufassal, al-Zamakhshari.
Al-Mufassal al-Zamakhshari. You know, generally Ajrumiyya nowadays, a typical kind of curriculum is Ajrumiyya, or Ajurramiyya. Sheikh Salih al-Husayni says it, that's correct to pronounce it. After a person memorized that, which is quite basic, it's a madkhal. To be honest, once you master Ajrumiyya, literally building, you're adding a few things to it after that. You generally will study Mulhat al-I'rab by al-Hariri, which is a poem, or you can study Qatr al-Nada by Ibn Hisham as well. And after that, you'll go to Alfiya ibn Malik, which is al-Khulasa. It's literally a summary of Nahu.
But that takes time to do.
That is a 1,000-line poem, and the interesting thing is a summary of his 2,000 roughly line poem, which is a Kafi to Shafiya. And that's a typical kind of curriculum in grammar. Nahu has its own curriculum. Sarf has its own curriculum. Nowadays there's a lot of good books. No, not at all. This is one of the hardest poems to memorize.
Forget about it.
Even it's so hard that some of the Shinqiti scholars actually rewrote it in Arabic to make it easy to memorize. Okay. But I would advise, and it's only specific itself. It doesn't deal with it.
So
deals with certain words. I would advise a Nadhm al-Maqsood, which is roughly 100-line poem, which is Mumtaz, mashallah, tabarakallah, it's a summary of al-Maqsood in Sarf. I would also recommend after that to read Shad al-Araf, to study Shad al-Araf by, I think, al-Hamlawi, which is al-Masri, which is a good modern day depiction of Sarf.
It should be.
And after this, mashallah, it's enough, inshallah.
Balagha, rhetoric.
Balagha, al-Balagha al-Wadiha, have durus min al-Balagha, and a number of other books as well.
Balagha really is.
Nadhmiyat al-Ma'ani.
Arabic language has been broken down into morphology, grammar, and balagha, rhetoric.
And
Three things. That's how traditionally it's been broken.
Traditionally, something there's more sciences in this. It's not more than that.
Okay. In terms of, we're not going to go through all the madhab.
We're not.
In fiqh.
No,
because
unfortunately we don't have time, and it's not my specialty. The other madhab not my specialty.
Let's go through, please. Let's go through just the Hanbali madhab, which is what you are. Are you a Hanbali?
Are you a Hanbali?
So I am, but a weaker one.
A weaker Hanbali, okay.
No.
Khair, inshallah.
Tell me what books we go through.
So generally the madhab, the Hanabila is studied, and I'm going to mention books that have been translated to English as well, inshallah.
Okay.
Commonly nowadays, and this is popularized by Sheikh Mohammed Osman in Kuwait, Bidayat al-Abid is a text that is studied first, which means literally translated as the commencement of the worship, or the beginning of the worshipper.
Okay.
It's a book that focuses only in ibadat, in worship, so purification, prayer, fasting.
What's the name of the Abdurrahman?
Abdurrahman ibn Abdullah al-Ba'li. Al-Ba'li, the author of Kashf al-Mukhaddirat, his beautiful explanation on Akhsar al-Mukhtasarat, which is actually the next book to study.
Okay.
Akhsar al-Mukhtasarat, the concise manual in fiqh, translated as well. By Ibn Balban. And this is actually a summary of a larger book of his in fiqh. And there's a number of good explanations on this, alhamdulillah. And actually, subhanAllah, I have to say this.
No.
The best explanation was actually an explanation recently authored by the Shaykh of the Hanabila in today's age.
Don't speak about me.
La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. The Shaykh of the Hanabila in this age, his name is Sheikh Ahmed al-Qu'aymi, and this book is Al-Hawashi al-Sabighat. Which, subhanAllah, wallahi, it's an honor for every single Hanbali that is alive today. It's an absolute honor that this book was written in this day and age for us to read it. He literally summarized the whole madhab in this explanation. And after that, you can study Zad al-Mustaqni by al-Hajjawi, which is a very important text to study.
Very mukhtasar as well.
It is not especially,
small,
it is small, considering it's in the realm of the other books in fiqh. But it's a very important book. It's a stepping stone to al-Muntaha. And Al-Iqna', which are the two most important books in the madhab. These are books that are studied after. Zad al-Mustaqni is also...
Who is that? Who authored al-Muntaha?
Let's come back to Zad al-Mustaqni. You know why? Because this is a book that is actually taught in most Islamic seminaries and universities in Saudi Arabia.
Did you study it?
Alhamdulillah, I studied it twice.
Okay.
One shot took
What
me
was that in?
4
Was
years.
that in thing?
No, this was outside with one of them, Sheikh Khalid Afifi, one of the students of Sheikh Uthaymeen, Hafidhullah Ta'ala. Now, Zad al-Mustaqni is commonly studied with a book called Ar-Rawd al-Murbi. which is a book, a commentary by Al-Buhuti. Al-Buhuti is one of the most famous, Buhuti Masri, Egyptian, mashallah. He's one of the most important figures in the Hanbali madhab of the later day and age. Now, after this level, mastering these books, you will then go on to study Al-Muntaha by none other than Ibn al-Najjar. Now, the madhab of the later scholars is actually two books, Al-Muntaha and what's the other one? Al-Iqna'. Al-Iqna'. By?
Al-Iqna' is by. It's not by Ibn al-Najjar.
I must have explained this about 5 times.
Who did you say?
Hijab.
Ah.
And the madhab is whatever these books agree on. And there's dispute if they disagree on an issue. This is to find out what the madhab is.
Ibn al-Najjar.
No, I think.
No?
If Muntaha and Iqna', whatever they agree on is the madhab.
Okay.
If they disagree, some say the madhab is what is in Muntaha. Others say no, you go to what Sheikh Mar'i Karmi said in another book which is called Ghayat al-Muntaha.
Why?
Ghayat al-Muntaha, what is Ghayat al-Muntaha? Ghayat al-Muntaha, he literally combines between Muntaha and Iqna'. He combined between the two, and he also mentions his own opinions. We call it ittijahat. He mentions he can't leave the madhab sometimes, and he mentions, and it's also possible that it could be X, Y, Z. And this is a summary, the best way to study the madhab of
You didn't mention the Qudama whatsoever.
You see, the madhab is comprised of 3 different levels. We have the later Hanabila, and the madhab is what the later Hanabila are upon. The later Hanabila meaning from the 8th century onwards, from the passing of Al-Mardawi, rahimahullah ta'ala, onwards, Ala ibn al-Mardawi, who was a great figure in the madhab. Then after that you have the medium, Tabaqat al-Mutawassitin.
So let's start again. So you got 3 tabaqat.
You have the later generations, the middle generation, and the earlier generations. Okay? And each one of them have their own usul in how to identify what the madhab is. They have their own major figureheads, and it's not really time to go into that.
Yeah.
What's important is to actually understand the later Hanabila.
So who are the later Hanabila, just to go over
The madhab is whatever Muntaha and Iqna' agree upon, and if Muntaha is
Ibn al-Najjar.
Ibn al-Najjar and what Al-Hajawi mentioned, and Iqna', and there's a long process if they disagree about where to go from there.
Okay.
Yeah. And remember, studying a madhab, is it the goal in and of itself?
No.
It's a means to the goal.
It's a spine. I don't know how
It's a
people
spine.
can study fiqh without something like that. I mean, it's going to be very difficult. It can be haphazard, isn't
Of
it?
course. What are you gonna do?
Get your hands dirty.
You're gonna literally just
Go into Bukhari.
go into Bukhari, take the
I read
hadith.
Bukhari. I had one guy in the area.
La hawla wa
He
la
goes,
quwwata
I read Bukhari twice.
Inna
You can ask me
lillahi
any
wa
questions you
inna
want.
lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Wallahi, I don't believe he's read Bukhari. I tell you why. I honestly don't. I tell you why. Because Bukhari, rahimahullah himself, he didn't attempt to even encompass all of the hadith of this deen.
Yeah, exactly.
He didn't. That wasn't his condition when he wrote it.
Sahih. Hadith.
Some of the Sahih, not even all of them.
Yeah.
Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi
This is something I want you to look at and take us through. This is what Darul Uloom people go through.
Okay, mashallah. So Darul Uloom, our Hanafi brothers, which is a great institution in the West, and of course there are disagreements in books that are studied, etc. But generally it's quite good, mashallah, tabarakallah. So they have decent curriculum in Arabic grammar, syntax, in morphology, in Arabic literature, Qisas al-Nabiyyin, which is a beautiful book by Abu Hassan Nadwi, rahimahullah ta'ala. It's actually great when you're learning Arabic to read that. The way he wrote it is that he gradually starts it quite easy, slowly builds it up. You read it, right?
No, I read a book. He's called
Al-Mukhtarat.
Al-Mukhtarat.
Al-Mukhtarat, I wrote actually. And also he has Al-Qira'at al-Rashida and other books. And logic, they study logic as well.
What did he study for logic?
It's written here as Al-Mantiq, Mirqat. I'm one of these books. And of course for fiqh they study Mukhtasar al-Quduri, which is one of the
It's their first book that I read.
yeah, it's one of the most important books in the Hanafi madhab. Ibn Abidin actually has a beautiful hashir called Hashir Ibn Abidin upon it.
Who's the mu'allif?
Al-Quduri, Mukhtasar al-Quduri.
When did he die?
Allahu A'lam.
It's not your method.
It's not my madhab, akhi. Unfortunately, I haven't gone into the fiqh of the Ahnaf yet. I hope to do it soon, inshallah ta'ala.
We are going to see you in Darul Uloom one day.
You might do. I don't have a problem with that. SubhanAllah. I don't have a problem to learn specific things from specific people. طيب. Quranic recitation, and they have their tajweed books that they've studied. The Quran, they actually go through translations actually in year 3 and year 4, and then year 5 they go through Jalalain, which is a very summarized tafsir that we're talking before. Principles of tafsir, actually the science of tafsir, they go for Al-Itqan by none other than Suyuti. This is one of the largest books written in principles of tafsir. It's not principles, it's sciences of the Quran.
Yeah.
Science, actually, but after him came Ibn Urayqah al-Makki, who added upon Al-Itqan greatly. It's actually, it's literally an encyclopedia of the sciences of the Quran. Recently printed, alhamdulillah. Have you got it?
No, I don't have that.
When you go to Hajj, make sure you
you know how big my little flat that I live in is?
Subhanallah.
Okay, I have to put my books in the boot of the vehicle. Now.
You know, alhamdulillah, that Allah Jalla wa Ala has given us a roof over our heads.
PDF.
And a roof over our heads, alhamdulillah, which is more important, ya Sheikh. طيب.
Most things.
And to be honest, even PDF, it's amazing. Mashallah.
Yeah,
I mean, I've got this hard drive. It's roughly.
Why waste space?
It's 500. No, nothing replaces a book.
Yeah.
Nothing replaces a
What
book.
PDF?
Nothing replaces a book. Having the book and holding it.
Also, what's that act of worship? Are you praying a bit that now?
No, absolutely, I'm not. Before you call me an innovator, okay.
I just have to come for Hajj.
But the asl, what's the asl in a person?
Okay.
Yeah, so then after principles
Where
of
are you
Hadith,
from again? Trinidad and Tobago?
my mum's from Trinidad, my dad's from Sudan, alhamdulillah. We go back to Abbas.
So I'm sure that that's not. Anyways.
Memorization of Hadith, they memorize some Hadith, they do a maqra, they read it.
They are known for like
It's good,
maqra'as and stuff. I've been to so much maqra'as.
It's good, it's great.
Very good.
طيب.
We went through all of it.
Went through most, if not all, mashallah.
We'll leave some links, inshallah.
We'll leave some links. There's a lot that we haven't covered. To be honest, if we wanted to go through it, would easily take about 3-4 hours.
Yeah, we did. I mean, we have to. This is the second shot. But anyways, Jazakumullah khairan, guys. This is what we could do in an hour. There's a lot more to say.
A lot more to say.
Any final remarks?
I pray that Allah Jalla wa Ala, whoever witnesses and watches this whole halqa, that he's benefited from this. And we pray that Allah grants us ikhlas and tawfiq to study this religion, this blessed religion, and to act upon that which we studied, which is the be-all, the aim of knowledge is to act upon it and not to learn for the sake of learning.
As for English stuff, like, quickly, the translation of English Quran that I like is Abdul Halim one. It's very nice.
MashaAllah.
It's a very nice
Hadith
one.
from Sas, yeah.
Yeah, and
MashaAllah.
there's also a few things like, for example, there's some nice books by Ibn Qayyim that's been translated in English.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like the Inner Dimensions of Prayer.
Beautiful.
They're very
Parables
beautiful,
of the
very
Quran as well.
very nice books. And also Ibn Rajab, the translated books.
His essays.
Is very nice little books that you can get as well. Hopefully you benefited from that, guys. And if you know that there's lots of things in Arabic that we've quoted and you can't access it, and you need the Arabic language to access it, that should give you more desire and more reason
to join Salam Plus, inshallah.
to join Salam Plus and know and learn the Arabic language with us. We're going to be doing that, inshallah, with Sheikh Mohammed Osman and other qualified instructors, inshallah. Wassalamu alaikum, guys, wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Shukran for coming.
Barakallah fi my pleasure. Jazakumullah.